You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, check out chrisblair.com. Hey everybody, this is Stories Behind the Songs. I'm your host, Chris Blair, and this is a special 4th of July episode, so happy 4th. I am so excited about today's episode. I'm sitting down with my buddy, Brian Davis. Brian is from North Carolina, and he has been into music inspired by his grandfather and father since he was a young boy. He would go around honky-tonks with them, tuning their guitars, whatever he could to just be around the music, and also was inspired by acts like Gene Autry to Hank Williams Jr. to Guns N' Roses and Bob Marley and Matchbox 20, just a wide array of music that fed his soul as he grew. He is an incredible songwriter, incredible guy. He's written songs for Brantley Gilbert, Lee Brice, Jason Aldean, and many more. One of my favorite songs, Memory I Don't Mess With, that he wrote with Lee Brice. We're going to talk about the story behind that song and some other great things in this episode. He's also a huge supporter of the military, which is a reason why I thought today was a great day to have his episode on. We're going to talk about what he has done with them, and we have both been working with a group, nonprofit called Creative Vets for many, many years. And we're also going to talk about that and what Brian has done with Creative Vets. Just an awesome episode. Can't wait. This is Brian Davis. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, this is another episode of Stories Behind the Songs. And before we get into it, I just want to say happy 4th of July. It was 147 years ago today in 1776 that the U.S. became independent. And we're just so glad to be here with Brian Davis on today. I thought this was the perfect guest to bring in today. Brian, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me, bro.
Absolutely, man. You've been busy.
Busy, yes. Business has been great. Running the road a ton. Writing's been amazing. But at this point, excited to take this day off to not do anything but enjoy freedom.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive in for all the listeners and start from the very beginning. So I always tell everybody we've known each other for a long time. Yep. So I know a lot of your story.
Yeah.
Pretend I don't know anything.
I got you.
Grew up in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you got into music early, watching your dad and your grandpa and playing honky tonks and all of that. Man. So
I did.
Walk me through this.
I just thought about when you said that, man. My first band that we ever put together was my brother, myself, and two neighbors in the neighborhood, and it was Brian, Ron, Andrew, and Tony. So we started this band called Brat. It's ridiculous. And it's so bad, but we played like 6 graduations and like school dances and stuff like that. Even as kids, man, we were playing like all the old school stuff. But I just wanted to be my grandpa and my dad growing up, man. I mean, I grew up watching that go down, and so for me, it was a natural progression to want to be like those two men. So, but then fast forward, I don't know. So probably my second band was a band called Slick Saddle, which is another funny story. But so I was 14 playing these honky tonks. And they wouldn't let me in the place. I just have to come in the green room on stage and then back off because I wasn't known to be in these places. But so that was just a good place to cut my teeth and figure out, how to be more entertaining than the bull riding in the back or the guy trying to get a beer or the guy trying to get a girl or whatever. You know what I mean? So it was a great education for me as far as that was concerned. It was also a great time to figure out why songs work and why they don't. It was big for me. That was always like a study that I was always about. But so then ultimately, fast forward a few years later, I drug a travel trailer out here, set it up north of town in Goodlettsville, and set up shop and started working, started writing songs, and I got in the room with some guys way before I really was good enough to be in the room with some of these guys like Bobby Wood and Dan Roberts and Brian Kennedy and these guys who were like tight with Garth, and so but that was again one of those moments for me. Just always as learning opportunities for me always. And so it was one of those deals where I'd go in the rooms and those guys didn't need me to write a song. They just needed ideas. I learned that really early. And so I made sure I always came in with great ideas, or at least I thought great ideas. And so then also in the process of writing those songs with those guys, I would kind of hit record in my mind and run this process and kind of, if the idea was about drinking a beer, I'd be thinking about drinking a beer, and those guys would be like, how do I get the girl in the song first? And I'm like, oh, great. So, but anyway, so long story short, we'd write these songs, and then I'd go home, and I would reverse engineer them back to the idea that I had, and learn why where I was mining for stuff wasn't where those guys were going, and it taught me a ton about the business in that regard too. So, so it was just a lot of that. You know, I'm always about a learning curve. I'm always about learning it, figuring out how to do it better and faster and all that stuff. So, but yeah, my childhood to now, you could have, if you'd have told the kid from Bilbo, North Carolina, that he'd be where he is now, that was crazy for me. You know, I still look at it and I pinch myself that I have the privilege to write songs for a living, and then on top of that, just be able to influence people and have the ability to change people's, you know, lives in certain ways with melodies and music. You know, so
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think like we grew up in a very similar way with just all kinds of music around us. You know, you like were a fan of Gene Autry to Hank Jr. to Guns N' Roses to Bob Marley to, I mean, you just had a huge spectrum of music just being thrown at you. So I think, like, how did that play a part of just what you've grown into musically today?
So I think that's one of the best things that I would advise brand new artists and brand new writers to don't just live inside of one genre, because there's a lot of times, man, when I have an idea hit me, I just go, what would it sound like if like Patsy Cline and Metallica did this? You know what I mean? That's two crazy polar opposite scenarios, right? But sometimes that musical magic happens by getting outside of the box. You know what I mean? And so to me, to have had all of those different influences, and then, you know, I hung out with dudes way older than I was growing up, but I also like had found a, you know, foundation of my parents and all the stuff they listened to too. So it was like this really interesting, like, very wide range of influences. So for me, I think that definitely contributes to how I approach melodies and how I think about, you know, maybe it doesn't need to be quite so structured in certain ways, you know what I mean, just when it comes to writing those songs. But for me, I have to attribute a ton of my success to the fact that I had such a versatile palette growing up. So.
Yeah. I mean, you literally grew up in honky tonks.
Honky tonks were my thing.
Yeah.
But it's so crazy because, like I said, I'd be in my truck sometimes listening to Three Doors Down,
right,
or listening to like Peter Tosh, who was even more obscure, you know, reggae artist. You know what I mean? But so I'm jamming that stuff in my truck. But then I get on stage and then we play we play Brooks and Dunn, and we play Clint Black, and we play, you know, Tracy Lawrence, and we play sometimes some Brian Davis songs that were terrible and shouldn't have been in the set. But you know what I mean? That's just kind of, for me, that was what it was about, you know. And I had that testing ground. That's one of the things I like to talk about a minute ago. It's like that testing ground to be able to walk on these stages and go, hey, I just wrote this thing. And and most of the time, people would be like, what is that? Why can't you play like Clint Black? You know what I mean? Or like Garth Brooks, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was learning. I was figuring it out as I went, you know what I mean? And sometimes you have to have that thick skin, and you have to have that risk about you to go, I'm gonna throw it out there and see what happens. You know, maybe it flies, maybe it doesn't. And that's this town too, man. This town, in my opinion, I was told this a long time ago, man, and it stuck with me. But this town is a people say no just means not yes yet. And that's a big piece of this town, man, because this town will beat you up on purpose in a way that will make you better if you let it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so the same thing on stages and honky tonks. You know what I mean? We take a chance on a song, and sometimes it would be a flop, and people would be like, you got to stop this, you know. But then eventually we got better at it. We figured it out, got to the point where our songs existed in the set, and because they were good enough to be in the set. You know what I mean? And then fast forward to being in arenas with Brantley doing the same thing, after playing these tiny honky tonks for so long, and then seeing the music working in arena levels, you know, and 10,000 people a night, you know. So it was just but all that's a giant dream that takes a ton of work and grind, as you know, and to make that happen is you can't, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the guy who's not willing to hear no 100,000 times to get that one yes kind of thing, you know. So
yeah, it's definitely a town that grows you thick skin.
Yes.
Or you go home.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a maze out here, man. I always think about it. It's like this maze out here is kind of designed to weed out folks who aren't willing to grind and do the work. You know what I mean? And be humble about it too. That's another. This town will humble you if you let it, and that will be one of your best assets. Anytime you walk into a room, to serve. You know, like I'm writing with artists, and I'm like, I walk in the room. I don't think about what I've accomplished. I walk in the room and say, how can I serve? Yeah. How can I serve you in this moment? How can I get you the best thing that we can create together in this moment? And that, to me, this town by humbling you down, man, that's a big piece of that toolbox, man. You walk in there with that, you'll be invited back every time.
Man, I freaking love you.
Dude,
Every time we get to hang, man, it's just like you've accomplished so much, and you're just still so humble, and you're just Brian Davis. You're just you, and I love that about you, man.
Fingers crossed we can just keep doing that some more.
Yeah. I mean, there was some other pretty huge names that saw that early on. I want to talk about how you walked into a room and then Harlan Howard joined you.
Man, that was a scary day. That was scary. I was cleaning.
Scary because you were full of horse manure, or like?
Well, all that. Yeah, it was so many reasons. That was just one of those days that I don't think. That's what I talk about all the time, man. And I just finished a song that's just this whole idea. But I was like, if God would have given me the pen, man, so I could write it however I wanted to, I would have missed out on everything cool. I just would have. And that's all right. That's a part of the chorus of the song I just finished. But I say that to say, like, I was cleaning horse stalls down in Franklin, and I mean, I grew up like around quarter horses and all that stuff as a kid growing up and all that stuff. But I was talking with Ralph Murphy one day, and he said, "What are you doing right now?" I'm saying, "Well, I'm out on the road like Wednesday through Sunday playing shows. I'm in town Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday cleaning horse stalls down in Franklin." And he was like, "Oh, you love horses?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he was like, but I'm like, I'm not riding the horses, bro. I'm literally in the stall. Like, that's what I'm doing right now, just so you know. And he was like, "Oh, well, Melanie Howard loves horses, man. I'll tell her about you, and and she's married to Harlan, obviously, and so we'll set up a meeting." And so he did, and I got, and so I had this meeting, but the day that I had this meeting was just supposed to be with Melanie Howard, and we had one of their a horse named Touch of Class, who was like a $1.2 million like hunter jumper, like she's just crazy stupid money, but so she got out and busted her head. It was like this whole crazy thing. So I didn't have a chance to shower, but I had to get to this meeting. And so I honestly smell like horse manure. And this is a really nice, Harlan's office is not shabby, right? I mean, it's a really, really nice place. And so I'm sitting in there, and it's just me and the receptionist. They went ahead and put me in Melanie's office. So I'm just sitting there and they're all by myself for 45 minutes. And I'm thinking, all the things go through your mind. Like, man, maybe this is a sign that I should get up and leave. Like, this fact that they're not here yet, maybe I should just get up and leave. And I went over and over my mind with that. And then I was like, you know what? I don't know. So I just stayed. And then the door opened up behind me, and I looked back and I saw Melanie, and I was like, oh, okay, we'll do this, whatever. And then right behind her came Harlan. And then she said, "Hey, Harlan's going to join our meeting today, so let's just go into his office." And then at that point, I mean, it was like, I don't know what I had my one song, right? We always have, like, when you're a baby figuring this out, you have that one song, right? And then it's like, so I go sit down in there, and he leans up and he goes, "What you got, son?" And so I played the song, played what I thought was the song. Finished it, had my eyes closed the whole time. I just didn't want to see. I just was praying that I got through it and not mess it up. And then he leaned up and he said, "What else you got, son?" And I was like, oh, that's not good. So then I played a second song, and the same thing. Played a third song, same thing. Played a fourth song. And he said, "Do you want a deal here, son?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." And then he said, "How much money do you need?" And I was like, all I knew about that was that I had to pay it back, right? I knew it was a draw, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, "Sir, I haven't even thought about that. Like, I don't know what I could even, I don't even know." And he just started laughing. He said, "I'm gonna give you $350 a week. I think you're gonna be fine." And so then he leaned over to Melanie and said, "Get the contracts together." And I was like, I can't believe, I couldn't gather fast enough. I was just like, I don't want to mess this up at this point. I just want to shake your hand, sir. Thank you so much, and bail and run. Because at that time, me and Dirks Bentley and Arliss Albritton, we were all like really tight. We played Bluebird together and some other stuff, but we were all trying to get deals at that time. And so I told the boys, I was like, "Hey man, you're never going to believe this, but I got a meeting with Melanie Howard." And so they were like, "Oh, dude, you got to tell us." So I left Harlan's spot, straight back over to Fame Publishing, where Dirks and Arliss were writing at the time. And I go in and I'm like, "Boys, they offered me a deal." And then we went and drank a bunch of beer like we had number ones. It was ridiculous. And so anyway, that was that, man. But it was that was a stressful day that I thought was going to go drastically different when he walked in the room, because I'm thinking, this guy is a legend. I don't have anything in my brain that he hadn't already thought of, and I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna regurgitate something that he's just like, great, more of the same, whatever. But for some reason, maybe it's because I smelled the way I smelled, and I was just like, I was barely hanging on, And maybe he just felt pity. Maybe it's pity for me. I don't know, man. But then that worked out to be a pretty sweet deal. So.
It wasn't pity. It wasn't pity.
So, but yeah, that's that crazy story.
Yeah.
But.
So then, what happened after that? What was the snowball effect of?
Well, just having a deal in town, being validated, right? There's something about you don't know. You hope you're good enough. You want to be good enough. You know what I mean? To be able to write in this town, and be taken seriously in this town. But at the same time, it's like once you have a deal, it changes the game. It changes how confident you are in what you do. You know what I mean? Because now you're like, somebody sees something in me that I knew was there, but I wasn't sure where it, how together it was yet. But so that changed the game there. And then getting in the room with other writers that were signed changed the game too, because now we're all like, we know what we're doing to the point where it's like, now let's figure out how to make money with this. Before it was, I tell people all the time too, when I kind of mentor, young guys or whatever, and I go, hey man, here's how it works. First thing you do is you get to town and you just want to write songs that are good enough just to, and then you go, okay, I'm not making any money doing that yet, so I got to figure out how to write songs good enough to get a publishing deal. And so you do. But then it's like, okay, now you realize that just getting a publishing deal doesn't do it yet, right? So then it's like, okay, now I just got to write songs good enough to be on records. And then from there, you realize that cuts, it's not the 90s anymore, so cuts are just cuts, right? What I mean? It'll keep your deal, but it's not really anything, it's not crazy money. Then you're like, okay, so now I got to figure out how to write songs good enough to be on records and on the radio. And when that happens, you start putting some rubber to the road. And Vicki McGehee has been like a mentor for me forever, man. I mean, I go to her with she's a beast, obviously, who she is, but she is one of those girls, man, that understands this business on a level that I can go and hey, this is where I am right now. And she goes, this is exactly what you need to do. I mean, she's just she's awesome. But having that said, it's like once you get to radio, then you're like, okay, now I got to make sure that it's good enough to be at the top spot, climb the mountain. I don't want it to stop in the 20s or the 30s or the 40s. I want it to go up to, I want to ring the bell, and then that wealth, we can take that wealth and we can reinvest in other writers and other things and continue our craft and make sure that it stays around. But that's where all that goes. So that progression is important. So, but each time the difference is you change your target. Like first your target was just to get in town and write songs. Yep. Then it's like in town writing songs or in a publishing deal. And then, then it's like cuts, and then it's singles, and then it's number ones. And that process is, the difference every time was this confidence level every time too. Because it was like, now I've got other hit writers that want to write with me. So it's like, okay, that tells me that I'm on the right path. I'm doing the right things. I've learned, I've put the work in, and I've understood the process now to this level, and now to this level, and now to this level. You know what I mean? And so there's just so many of those pieces of the puzzle, but really that started with one guy going, I'll give you a chance. Yeah. Just like all of us have had, and that changed my trajectory drastically. Because before that, I was like, I'm just a kid from Carolina who goes back and plays honky tonks and comes out here and bangs on my guitar and tries to, to write songs that would matter, kind of thing. But then it's like that guy's stamp of approval, game changer.
I know everybody's got a different path and all of that, but for you, how many songs would you say that you wrote before, like let's say before a single, before you have a cut?
I would say 1,500 or more, maybe 2,000. I mean, I believe in work, man. I mean, I wake up every morning and I have a regimen. We can talk about that in a moment, but the thing is, you have to do this to do this. You know what I mean? Yep. And so if you're not cranking out output, but you also have to have input coming in to be able to have output go out, right? I mean, that's how that process works. But all of those songs got me a little better every time. And honestly, if we're being real, like I kind of figured out the writing side of it before I figured out the business side of it. So that's one of the things that was lagging for me that I didn't understand yet. And that's kind of where that progression I discussed a moment ago is, like what you need to target in order to make sure you have a business out here. Yeah. So, but every one of those songs got me closer and closer to the business intersecting with the creative side, and then turning it into an actual revenue streams. And now I don't talk in terms of songs anymore. It's like I go out on the road with Lee Bryce or whoever, and I'm bringing home 6 revenue streams. Yeah, that's my mind. My mind thinks like that now. You know what I mean? Where before it was like, I got these 6 songs. It's like, that's good. We have the songs are perfect, but that song and you know the story here, like once it's a number one, it generates an amount of wealth, but it also starts building this catalog that is a business.
Yep.
And that catalog sale is where you're really going to benefit tremendously from
Yep.
that environment, right? I mean, that's the thing that's real after, is starting this business, and like every song is like a small business, but then the catalog is a bigger business that houses all the smaller businesses, and then you take that and put it on the market, and now you're talking about like changing your life.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah. Let's talk about that catalog. Let's move into that. You mentioned a while ago, you know, being on the road with Brantley Gilbert, Lee Brice.
Yep.
You've been friends with those guys for years and years.
Yeah.
Let's either one of them. We talk about both of them, but
Yeah.
you pick to start with, and let's talk about that friendship and kind of, you know, riding with them and how you ended up out on the road with them and going to the cuts.
Well, so for me, we'll start with Lee. Lee and I met at Curb Publishing back in like 05 maybe, or something like that. And at that time, I still had a lot of artist things going on. And so there was just this peer-to-peer scenario. You know what I mean? Like, because he's an artist, I was an artist. And I think that unlocked a lot of opportunities for me personally, because it's one thing to have like a writer be in the room with an artist, but if both of them are writer artist, then they communicate on a different level. Their mindset is like we talked about. I mean, like I walk on stage in front of 10,000 people. I did that for years and years out with Brantley. He wanted me on every show, and I was like, bro. So I did it, but we had this peer-to-peer thing. You know what I mean? And so when I got in the room with him, it wasn't like I was like, hey, you know, you're the guy. How do we do? You know, it's like, no, man. We both understand the end game because we both have been on the stages and we understand the process. You know what I mean? It was like, it's not like a writer. If I tell a writer in town, like, hey, you got to be on a bus, and it's kind of like they don't know what bus etiquette is yet. So it's hard for them to go on the bus and be effective in that environment. But guys like us who have been on buses for way too long and going on stages every night doing the same thing, we understand 360 of it. Like I always talk about, sorry, I'll get off for 2 seconds on this thought. It's like, to me, a song, like I get an idea, shows up, and then it's like, for me, it's like, first it's got to be applicable on radio, because that's our biggest revenue stream is radio, right? But then it also has to be a song that can put asses in seats. It has to be like a ticket, like something so passionate about these songs that the fans will come for 12 hours. They'll drive 12 hours to come to the show, kind of thing. So there's that as well. And then ultimately building that into something that you can be proud of as an artist that's going to want to sing that song for 25 years. You know what I mean? So there's 3 facets to that process for me. And so when I get an idea, the first thing I go, is it a reflection of reality or is it an escape from reality? And then once you figure that out, which most of the time, I'll do an escape from reality more than a reflection, because most of the time people have had enough reality. You know what I mean? So give them something a little different, you know, that's going to take their mind off their life a little bit. You know, so that's where my head goes immediately. And then I try to make it a tempo about a girl every time. But that wins on radio. Then everybody in the arena, when you fire it off, the girls are like, oh, that's about me. And the guy's like, oh, that's what I want to say. I don't know how to say that to you, but that's what I want to say. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And then the artist on stage goes, man, this is a win for me. You know what I mean? So it's like everybody wins in that regard. So with like Lee and Brantley both, really, we had that peer-to-peer kind of scenario because we did so much of the same thing that it works out well. And then I will say one more thing is that, to me, a great song is a byproduct of a great hang.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we never go on the road like we're going to grind. And we do. We don't know how to not do that, right? But we don't go out there and go, hey, man, don't take our nose off the ground. So we go out there and go, hey, man, let's have a good time and see what happens.
Yep.
And, you know, and the revenue stream or the songs show up. You know what I mean? That's just how that works. So with Lee, it was kind of one of those things, man. And we've had a number one with Lee that we've had a bunch of cuts before that. And we've got a pile ready for this record, man. I can't wait for you to hear this new record, dude. It's so good. But we've got a pile, you know, and it was like, and some of those songs that they were something we purposely agended for Lee, and then some of it was, you know, I always have tons and tons of ideas in my phone, and it can come around in some of the most interesting ways. Like we were on the way back from a run, and because I'm always typing new ideas in my phone constantly. I mean, I was in Orlando last week, for 6 days or 7 days, and I probably put 30 ideas in my phone just from listening to people's conversations around me, and so I was digging through, and we'd already written some songs on this one particular run. We were coming back in, and I was just digging. I was deep. I was probably 2 years ago deep in like ideas, just scrolling, and I came across this one, and I was like, oh man, I forgot about this. And I said, Lee, that's actually what I did. I said, Lee, man, I forgot about this idea, dude. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, it's called, it was kind of, I just had like this little piece. It was like, that's a memory I don't mess with, the girl I was obsessed with, the one I was obsessed with, da 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 da. I just like had that little piece. And he was like, bro, really? And I'm like, dude, I just found it two years deep in my idea box, right? And so he was like, man, that's a single on my next record without a doubt. And I'm like, we didn't even have it written yet. And he's heard that little piece of it and was like, that's happening. And so long story short, we got off the bus, we'll get back on it, blah blah blah. And then a year later, we're down in Texas, me and Lee and Billy Montana. And I hadn't thought about it, man. That's why I talk about God does God, but I do God every time. But it's like, so literally, Lee comes off. We'd have been out for, I guess, 4 days at this point. It was the last show. He just blew it out the last show. And then so he comes on the bus, and he's like, BD, you know what we need to do tonight, man? Because Billy's here. And I was like, finish memory. And he was like, yeah. But I don't, honestly, I hadn't thought about it. It's just, I mean, we did that memory. I don't, and then left it. And then literally, Billy's like, boys, I'm not getting on that, man. That's, you already, I got that, dude. And we're like, nah, man. So we kind of, Lee and I kind of just beat the chorus out right there in front of Billy. And he's just like, God. And Billy's side of the story is amazing too, because he was like, what am I gonna do right now? Because like, that's amazing and blah, blah, blah. So he sat down and he was like, well, he just started he's a Bob Dylan fan, big time. So he was just like, type. And he was like, hey man, maybe this is like verse 1. And I love Lee. And Lee was like, oh really? Like that's your verse, right? Yeah. And he's like, give me your computer. And Lee literally just went, red leaves on the river, footprints in the sand, like sang the whole entire verse seamlessly perfect. We have it recorded. And it was like, that's it. And then, so then we wrote the second verse, and then the little bridge, and then I could show you some of these videos sometime, man, but we were riding home, and we spent the next 3 hours, I want to say it was right at 3 hours, Lee just trying to get this one little part, man. I mean, I'm talking about, this went on and on and on, and I don't play it as well as he does, but it's like he was going, you know what I mean? He was doing this thing. But every time he got to the end, he was trying to write the whole thing. Every time he got to the end of it, he like almost would get it, and then he'd be like, film me again. And so me and Billy Montana we're in the front lounge of the bus going 89 out on the highway, and I'm like, hey Billy, man, what take are we on? And Billy would be like, take 62. And I would I'd take the camera over to Lee. It was amazing, man. But that was like one of those moments where when we finished that song, and Lee at the end, he was like, I told you that's a single on my record, bro. That's a single on my record. And again, he heard 3 lines of it. Yeah. And he was just like, that's it. So those are interesting moments and when you have that kind of confidence in an artist like Lee, it makes it easy to go, all right, bro, if you believe that, I believe that. Yeah. Let's go. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. And so to me, that's classic Lee too. But again, you never know where the song is going to come from, or if we would have messed it up, if we would have just beat it down that day that we just started that chorus, you know what I mean? Then Billy would have been out, and then we would have missed out on some of the coolest Bob Dylan, Billy Montana on the planet, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, but.
Yeah, so then what was what were the steps after that? Did he get home and pretty much record it right then?
He got home, he was going in the studio not long after that, yeah. And so that was one of the very beginning ones. And then he told me, so then you, of course, like the way that it works when you're the label, you basically record the record and you send the songs in. And then at this case, Mike Curb is the guy. And so it's interesting how Mike Curb works though. I learned this with Lee, but he said, Mike he and his wife will get some wine and they'll just play the record down. And he said they kept going back to Memory I Don't Mess With. He said that's the that is the single. That's the second single on this record. That's what went down. So it was like one of those moments where you're like, okay, that's cool, but that's the second single, man. And so when One of Them Girls came out, we were like, that's a smash. That's a smash song. And so much a smash that Memory started out a little slow on radio because they didn't want to get off of One of Them Girls yet. And so, but it worked out great because then there was just this whole, we were on the radio with Memory for, it was like a little over a year. And now it's still in recurrent, like crazy spinning. So it's one of those like good job God moments, you know what I mean? Like we're just grateful we had a chance to be a part of it, you know. But so yeah, that's the story of
that's the song when we hang out for tailgates for the Titans games. That's the song I always like. Come on, BD, you got to play this one. So,
yes, absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely.
What about Brantley?
So Brantley. Similar thing. I was having lunch one day with Michael Knox, who is Aldean's producer, as you know, and so he was like, "Hey man, there's this kid in Georgia named Brantley Gilbert that I think if y'all got together, man, it would be crazy." And I was like, "Well, what's his story, man? Is he coming up or what's up?" And he was like, "Man, no, he doesn't want anything to do with Nashville. He just wants to be famous in Georgia." And I'm like, "Well, you know what, bro? I'll just put it out in the world, and if it's supposed to happen, then God will make it happen, and I ain't got to worry about nothing." And so literally like 2 weeks later, I get a call from a buddy of mine who owns my favorite venue back home in Carolina. He's like, "Hey man," and this is so funny too when you think about like where we are now. You fast forward 10, 15 years and you go, "Oh yeah." But he said, "Man, I got this kid coming up named Brantley Gilbert from Georgia, and I don't know if we're going to sell any tickets, man, but you sell this place out. Would you just come back and y'all can just co-headline or whatever?" And I'm like, I'll be do that. So we go back and we do the show, but I'm on stage just finishing my sound check, and Brantley is standing side stage, and I was just playing this thing I just finished, this brand new song, and he was like, "Hey man, who wrote that?" I was like, "I wrote it." And he's like, "Cool." in Brantley fashion. Yeah. And so then I'm like, and then he said, "Hey man," we talked for just about maybe less than 30 minutes. And this idea showed up, and we're on the bus riding it 30 minutes later. I mean, it was like one of those deals, and then we just clicked on that level, and then we spent years and years and years on the road. Sometimes it would just be us in one bus with the band. Sometimes it was, as he grew more than I did at the time, 2 buses, 3 buses, 6 buses, tractor trailers, the whole 9 yards eventually followed. But we literally we kind of had this regiment, he and I did. Like we would go, basically wheels up, we just lock ourselves in the back lounge of the bus and start riding. And it would be 5 or 6 or 7 in the morning before we crash out. And then we'd sleep till, noon or whatever, 2 o'clock, whatever, get up, have some breakfast, sound check, meat and drinks, all the things we had going on, and then play the shows, and then, all that stuff. So, but that routine stayed in place literally from like probably 09, 08 or 09, something like that, all the way through to like 2018, where we go on the road, even when it was in arenas, man. We would be like, my bus would follow, I'd be on Brantley's bus, and we'd front lounge at that point because we was just us on the bus. We'd have a studio up there, and we would just go at it, and write songs, and quite honestly, most all of the big stuff that we've had was all based on the familiarity that he and I have with each other, you know what I mean, and how like-minded we were about the business, about the industry, about what we thought the music should sound like, just all that aggressive. I mean, I'm just a much more aggressive, he is. I mean, same thing. It's like I want music to be like, Yeah. And it's ironic that some of my biggest hits are like, that, not that, but my live shows are always the whole different story, right? So, but and even, like we had a number 1 with Brantley called One Hell of an Amen. Same kind of thing. It was the deal where like I literally had this idea, and I wasn't sure which one it was going to be yet. So I had written it in my phone 2 different ways. One was One Hell of a Hallelujah, and the other was One Hell of an Amen. And I had kind of the same kind of thing. I had already carved out, like, preacher said he died too young, over there toting that gun, kind of thing. Just had like a kind of a quick broad stroke of the verse 1. And Brantley and I were on the road in Indiana, and I said, "Bro, I got this thing, man." And he's like, "I love that, dude." I was like, "But I don't know which one it is yet." I told him the 2 titles, and he was like, oh, it's one hell of an amen, bro, all day long. So I was like, all right. So we busted out a verse and chorus on that day, and then we had to roll. We ran out of time, so we jumped on, played the shows, and then the next weekend we were down in Florida, and Uncle Mike Deacle, who was like, what a talent, what a huge beast of a guy he is.
Yeah.
But he was down with us on that next run, and we'd finished up one song, and then Brantley was like, you wanna get him in? I was like, absolutely, man. So we were like, Uncle Mike, dude, got this thing. And he was like, boys. And he's such a good dude. So we busted out the second half of that, you know, and it was that because I knew that they both knew when it came to the cancer side of that song, they both knew the guy, you know, from hometown, and so it was one of those special things for them to be able to really connect on that deal, you know. And so, but and that, you know, that was another one of those life-changing songs, because I've had the privilege of standing in arenas all over the country, and I just go to front of house most of the time. I'll be playing a show and just go watch the crowd, watch things going on, but I've seen that song just be a shoulder for so many people, you know what I mean? And it's just, I don't know, to me, like I say this a lot, but I mean it every time. It's like, when it comes down to money's great, but it's just money. It's just a tool. But, and the accolades are great, like the plaques, half of them are on my floor in my studio. They're not even on the wall. There's only 2 on the wall. But when you see those, you see it impact people. When you get emails and the you know, DMs and socials and stuff, it's like, hey man, that song got me through one of my darkest times. And it's like, when you hear that, it makes sense, man. Because ultimately, like, success is just success. But if it does it like that, if it's success that comes along with this, like, this healing of a situation, or you know, having somebody that goes, hey man, that changed me, that made the difference in my life, you know, then it's like, cool. Because again, money's just money, but those types of moments, those connections personally like that, game changer for me. Yeah, those will outlive any of the plaques I have on my walls. Yeah, the stories I've heard, you know what I mean, and the interactions I've had with people. That's the difference for me.
This episode is brought to you by Sennheiser microphones. When we first started this podcast, we were using some older microphones, and Sennheiser came in and sponsored us and gave us some MK4s and 914s. And I mean, I'm telling you, it's made all of the difference in the world. We love these microphones. We use them at the listening room as well. And I just can't say enough great things about them. Go check out Sennheiser.com. If you are into music in any way, their microphones are hands down the best on the planet. Go check them out, Sennheiser.com. And thank you, Sennheiser, for the support and the sponsorship. We love y'all. I love it. I mean, that's another, just one of the many reasons I love you, dude. You know, your heart, you know, and there's a lot of people in this town that are like that, right? But, you know, just from the moment that we met, you know, and all the hangs down in St. Augustine and, you know, everything, you know, it's another reason that, you know, when we started talking about doing this together, you know, I was like, all right, July 4th is a Tuesday. We put episodes out every Tuesday, and your love of God and country is like, you know, just, I was like, okay, BD is the guy for the 4th of July. So, let's kind of shift and talk about that. You've done a lot with Creative Vets, and you know, just your passion for that. I don't even have to tee it up. I'll just let you go.
No. So for me, I mean, I grew up in Carolina, man, and so and it was Fort Bragg, Camp Lejeune. They call it Lejeune, which we just rednecks word from country boys. We just misspell everything or mispronounce everything. So, but Camp Lejeune and Fort Bragg and Cherry Point, like those are all like. Most of the guys from my high school, man, it was you were going to be a mechanic or you were going to be a Marine. That's pretty much how it went down, or an Army, you know. So it's like, so to see that and to understand what it really means to have a military like that can keep us free, because it's like there's so many pieces of that puzzle that we take things for granted on such a level, man. And but then once you get out and you start seeing, especially coupled with like when Hell of an Amen, man, when you meet these operators, these SEALs, these Rangers, those dudes, man, and when you see a song put their head in their hands and they're just, because they're dying, because their battle buddy, they watched one of the worst days of their life go down, and that song brings that around for them, but it also brings around some healing with it too. But so the fact that we have what we have in this country, and we have people who are absolutely fine with going down for it. You know what I mean? And to not celebrate them, to not take a moment and go, hey man, how can we help? And that's, I love Creative Vets, because when they call, I say yes every time, man.
Yep.
Because I see them changing people's lives on a regular basis. And one of the worst things that we have going on right now is we teach our guys, we tear them down, man, and we build them up, and they're just warriors, right? But then once their body starts to come apart or whatever, you know, and then they get shuffled back into society, and it's like, but they're not, that transition isn't happening well. And so Creative Vets does an amazing job of identifying like the most at-risk PTSD guys, brings them into town, and I love this about it, man. And they pay for everything to bring them into town, and then they set up guys like us to go write songs with them, because and the whole point in the song is just to get them to start talking. Because if they'll start talking, then they'll drastically drop the chances of becoming one of the 22 in a day. You know what I mean? That aren't going to make it till tomorrow. So that's huge for me in that regard, man. But again, you know, you look at this and you go, how do we not say yes to that? How do we not support that on that level? Because those guys, everyone I've met, man, and I know a bunch of them, and I've done a lot of work with them, and they all are over there like, I was willing to give my life for this country. And then I get back to this, and it's like, come on, man. So, and not every story is that far down that road, but we have to be cognizant and mindful of the fact that we have the best country in the world, man. And we have, because this experiment called democracy and freedom is like, that's huge. And so for us, and I think that is coupled with country music on such a level too, because I love that our, at least what I try to do in this, you know, in my part of my career is to, hey man, how do we keep morals, ethics, and values and patriotism involved in our music? You know what I mean? And that's kind of a big piece of it for me personally, you know. And so to have an outlet like Creative Vets to kind of go in there and find a way, because giving back, we all know giving back is the greatest thing to do, man. I mean, taking sucks, giving is the best way to go about it, you know. So, but yeah, man, I'm excited about all that they're doing, and any way we can always help them, we do, you know. So
it's a great organization. We've been working with them a long time as well, and just you know, I remember when, you know, those guys came in and they were just starting, and you know, down on 2nd Avenue, and they're like, hey, we've got this thing, we just started. He's like, this is what we're doing. I was like, dude, this is so amazing. And you know, and it was so small, right? And now to see what they've accomplished, and great guys running it, and thank you for you taking your time to do stuff like that. It's like, I know you don't look at it like that, you know, like you just said, you're giving, and that is just your heart. But you know, a lot of people wouldn't do that, so thanks.
Well, it's funny that you think you're going in there to like bless them, but it's always the flip. I always leave going, man, I think I got more out of that than they did. You know what I mean? At times, and they're ecstatic about the song that they have now. And a lot of times those songs are content that they don't know how to tell their spouse or their kids, or, you know, or like they basically take the song when it's all said and done and go, here you go. I was trying to tell you how I feel, or what I'm fighting through right now, but here's a song that does it because I can't get the words out, kind of thing. So it's amazing. But I'll leave there blessed every time that I go in there to be a part of that. You know what I mean? And I do it because I love it, but I also, man, to how God does God so good, man. In those situations, it's like I was going in to be like, let me give and help, and he's like, bro, that's not how this works, man. So I don't know. I just feel blessed to be able to be part of it, and to be able to be involved at whatever level that I need to be involved in there. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. A while ago, you talked about your morning routine, your morning regimen. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So my wife and I have 2 daughters, and so I try to get up before anybody else does, so my mind is super clear, and I can go and I can really get what I need to get done first thing in the morning. But a lot of times, like even to this day, like I go in, I got a studio in my house. I just go in my studio, cup of coffee. Well, first I spend some time with God first, and then I move into my business side of my world. But so that looks like for me, I do idea mining about 30 minutes a day, and then I go through and I do idea management, like meaning like if I've got Aldine coming up, or I have, you know, Lee Bright, whoever, you know what I mean? Like whoever the artists are I have coming up in my world. I go ahead and start going through these ideas and going, okay, I could see how that would be great for X. So I kind of categorize all my ideas out. So and then I'll spend, of those, I'll find the top 10 that I think are, you know, as I get like 3 weeks out from whoever I'm working with coming up, I'll go ahead and start busting out some verse choruses of, you know, I'll have like the top 10 ideas I feel like would be best for them based on what they've covered in the past. Now, do due diligence on all this stuff too. So it's like, you know, that like Brantley, for instance, he's not going to have another Dirt Road anthem, but that slot's going to be on every record. So it's, what does the next version of that look like?
Yeah.
And for us, there's a song called "It's About to Get Dirty" that Brantley and I wrote by ourselves that he felt like was that progression, right? So that's kind of how I think about that stuff too when it comes down to it. And the songs I know that like Keith Urban is going to write, because he's gonna do that stuff. So I don't want to go down that road because he's already on that road. So I'll find a road over here that might help, you know, round out his record or whatever, you know what I mean? So there's just so many pieces of that puzzle, and all that stuff kind of factors into what ideas I put where, and then how I approach those ideas. I'm always trying to make them up tempo as every time that I can, you know. That's kind of how it works. But
yep.
But so that's my piece of that puzzle. And then lastly, it's like whoever I have that day, I go ahead and get myself ready so that when I walk in the room, you know, the story here, it's like opportunity meeting preparedness is success, right?
Yep.
So I try to make sure that I have all of that stuff. I mean, I've already decided we're gonna be successful today. That's it, right? So, but by doing all that stuff before I get there, I'm already ready to do what we need to do to make that happen. So that's kind of that front end of my life, or my days they're very similar to that pretty much every day, you know. But it has to be that we talked about input to output. You can't have output without input.
Yeah.
And so to me, the input is sitting there and going, okay, I need these ideas, or I want to look through this stuff. I want to make sure I am pushing information in these moments that I know that will come out the other side. And as long as I continue to do that, I've had success for years now, based on that kind of situation that I operate in. So
yeah, man, that's so good. I think that's such good advice for people listening too, especially you know, those who want to go down that path of songwriting. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a room, you know, even with 3 or 4 guys, and you know, we spend the first 30 minutes to an hour just going, all right, what do you got? What do you got? What do you got?
Yep.
And like, I don't know that I've ever been into a room and not done a song. We may not have finished a song, but I don't think that we've ever not found something and then, you know, and done it.
Yeah.
But it's those songs that, you know, you walk out and go, okay, well, that one's going in the guitar case and it's never coming out. You know, it's like, so, you know, they're really bad. But to go in so prepared like that, especially where you are in your journey, and thinking that way of like, okay, this is a song for Brantley, this is a song for Lee, you know, whatever. Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, and dude, I've learned a ton from Ashley Gorley. He and I get to write together a decent amount, and like, he's one of those dudes where he understands how to read a room. And I might have had 10 things prepared for whoever that artist is that day, but that artist may not be there. Like, for instance, man, it was me and Ashley, Jordan Davis, and Paul Diagiovanni, 3 or 4 of us in a room. And I had all these ideas.
You should have tried to get some good writers.
I know, right? Well, I always want to be, the what is it? The dumbest in the room, and the
come on, man, you're up there. You're right up there with them. Come on.
But what was funny was I had all these ideas, man, and I mean, dude, I had already done everything that we just discussed. So that's like, I'm loaded for bear. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then we get in the room, and Paul goes, "Hey, Ashley, what are you feeling today, man?" And I was like, "It's interesting that you would ask Ashley." Because I'm always like, hey, artists, what do you need? But and obviously they had like several writes together already, so they already had a little system. I just happened to be the 4th in the room, right, that day. But so I started tossing some ideas out, and Ashley was like, that's really cool, that's really cool, that's really cool, that's really cool. But never went anywhere with it yet. But what he was doing was fishing until Jordan was like, oh, that's cool. And then at that point, it's like, my point in that is like, know what song you're supposed to write that day.
Right.
And it's like, that's Ashley's so great at that, man. He just kind of sits up at 30,000 feet, and then he goes, okay, that's the one he's biting on, let's go. We can make that a hit. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So it's like, it's interesting to, and again, that's just the maturity in the room that you don't have as a young writer, but you learn as you go, you know what I mean? And so, one more piece of advice I think I'd give all the young guys, man, like pay attention to the masters in the room, the guys who know what they're doing, man. Because there's a reason why they're going in the directions they're going in, or they're acting on certain scenarios versus like, because anything could be a hit any given day, but it can and it can't. You know what I mean? If you push the wrong thing that day into a moment, you might lose that right forever, because that might have been the wrong thing. It might have been agendaed too much for you versus the artist. You know what I mean? So it's like, but
so good.
So yeah, it's just it's a constant learning process. I mean, I don't think I'll ever not be in a room going, I just learned something new that day. Yeah. You know what I mean? That cracked the code a little closer now than I had it before, you know? So. Yeah. But.
I want to talk about your stuff too, because gosh, how many albums do you have out now? Like,
so probably 9. But I will say, so for me, I always kind of, the way that I answer this question pretty often is like, I didn't know, I just knew I wanted music out. And Ron Stuvey, one of my buddies at Universal, he was BMG at the time, but he was like, hey buddy, he flew to Carolina, caught a show, and he's like, hey buddy, I want you to go write 10 100%ers, we'll record them, put them out, you own them, and then you know, we'll talk later. I was like, dude, I don't want to do that. I came to get a record deal, blah blah blah. You know, and I mean, we kind of had like our rubs and knuckles and all that stuff, but he told me to do it, so I did it reluctantly. I did it, and so put out the first record, and then. I so wanted to prove him wrong. This is so bad, like, but I so wanted to prove him wrong. So when I put this 10 songs out, you know, and I was like, dude, look, they made $27 last month. 27. This was all digital stuff this time. We were flirting. This is like 05. We were flirting with the whole like Apple Music, you know, or iTunes and all that stuff back in the day. And I was like, dude, this is a waste of time, man. It's a waste of time. And he's like, no, do it again. I was like, bro, and so, I mean, like, we really had a pretty contentious relationship for a while based on this journey he had me on alone. But so I did a second record, same kind of thing, $50 or I mean, it went up very little. I mean, I was like, I'm proving him wrong. I love this, man, because he'll eventually fold, man. And then, so anyway, fast forward to like 4 or 5 records into this situation. Now I'm out in front of 10,000 people a night with Brantley. Yeah. And I own everything, good, bad, ugly, everything in between. Some of the stuff you're like, why would you ever put that? You know, everything in between. Like there's records I'm proud of, records that I was learning curves on. It's just all those things. But at the end of the day, I didn't realize that he was building me a business that would, in my world, would trump the record deal that I was trying to get. Because now I have these revenue streams and I have all these things going on that are far beyond what a possible record deal would have done. You know what I mean? And it sounds crazy, but so for me, that's that. But yeah, there's like tons of music out, and honestly, I'm about to put some more out. I've got a pile, man, that I'm in the situation where it's like I'm constantly writing with all these other artists and building their records and stuff, and so I'm backburnering my stuff. But I've got these, and kind of how I operate too is I'll write these songs, the ones that are for me, and I'll write them. And then I'll run from them. And if they chase me down, then I know I have something. And so the ones that I wake up in the morning and they're back in my mind, I'm like, okay, all right, I get you, God. I get you. Okay, I'll do that. But not right now, but I will do that. You know what I mean? So now, but I'm at the point where it's like, all right, let's just pull the trigger on some more stuff.
Man, isn't it funny how that happens? There's been songs that like either I've written or songs that I, like other buddies, you know, have played for me. Like, hey, what do you think about this song? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel it. You know, like whatever. Yeah. And then a week later, you're in the shower and you're humming, and I like catch myself like, what am I singing? Yep. And then I'm like, oh, come on. That's the song.
That's how it works, man. It's crazy, dude. And I think, I don't know, I've learned so much again from Ashley, man, about like how important a melody really is. Man. Yeah. Most of the time, people just, they'll go stock on a verse melody, thinking that the chorus is what people are going to hang on to. But man, you got to get them to the chorus. Yeah. So Ashley is so great at like going, no, man, let's make that melody let's do this to that, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And so I've learned that over the course of I mean, we've been writing together, man, probably the last 10 years. Ashley and I have, man. We've got Brantley cuts and Lee stuff and like all kind of whatever's, but to me, that earworm stuff that we talk about, you know, all the time. There's reasons why. I mean, like think about this. Like one of the biggest songs that's out right now is "Last Night."
Yep.
With Morgan, but start with the chorus. Start with the chorus, and then how seamlessly the chorus goes into that verse.
Yeah.
Because it's like last night, you know, I kissed your lips, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't even have to have a. It's just they killed it, man. They killed the game on that, and that's a great blueprint to kind of go back and go, okay, reverse engineer that down and go, okay, I understand why every single piece of the song is actually a hook inside of itself.
Yeah.
And it's so there's so much to be learned from just dissecting that one song. You know what I mean? Like it's like when Beer Never Broke My Heart came out with Luke, and it was like nobody's been there for so long. That honky tonk, you know, that to me, that was teed up at the perfect time to be a smash, and it will be global. Like Randy Montana will be riding his tractor for the next 20 years because of that song.
Yeah.
and deservingly, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I say that in a good way because he's my boy, but so.
Yeah. And how long they sometimes will sit on those songs, you know, like a couple years even, you know, where it's like, this is a hit, but not right now. And they'll find that gap and go, okay, it's time.
Exactly. Yeah, because I don't think, I mean, I'm always writing to be relevant, really. I mean, you know, as far as like, we're not shooting for what's on the radio right now because that's already done. We're shooting, we're forecasting 6-8 months or a year out, right? That's what we're doing. We're looking at this thing because it's all secular, right? So there'll be, it'll at some point we'll move back over into like whatever, you know, story songs again or what, you know, they'll always be like this kind of wraparound thing. But so by thinking like that, it's like I'm not shooting for right now. I'm shooting for down the road, but I'm also making sure that my quote unquote projections for where things are going. I got my barometer up of like, hey man, how many mullets am I seeing right now? You know what I mean? How many? You know what I mean? Just, you know, that kind of stuff. That's like that's a big piece of it, man. And also another little trick I had back in the day was I would go out every day into like in these arenas. People are just, you know, they're tailgating everywhere. I'd get PJ, which is Brantley's security guard. He and I get in the golf cart. He's a big old dude. Get in the golf cart, and I was like, man, let's just go find the biggest party out here we can find. And I just want to hear what they're playing. And dude, like, and this was back in probably like, I don't know, like 2010 or 11 we started doing this. And I was so excited, dude, because we were in this, I don't remember what arena we were in, but like we're going around and then I hear Black Hawk. And I'm like, yes, that's all. You know, anyways, I'm a big fan of those dudes, so it was cool. But then it's like Diamond Rio, you know, and then you hear some Tracy Lawrence and you're like, okay, we're getting into that world right now. And shortly after that, Combs comes along and starts busting out some old school stuff, you know what I mean? And it worked out great. I mean, it was, you know, it was a great setup. So, but having those feelers out there, and also what I would do is kind of more of an inside thing, but I would always give my number to, like, I'd find kind of the ringleader in whatever party. Because, I mean, what they are is they're a great conduit to access the fan base, but then also they're a great conduit because they're like out there starting the parties, being a part of the party when the party's not even there, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And so what they're listening to matters to me. You know what I mean? And if it's Brooks and Dunn, or if it's Garth, you know, whatever, whoever it is, or Three Doors Down, or like Matchbox, or, you know, whatever, like they're jamming to it, that means that's what they're in, that's where they are in that moment, and that snapshot of time for them. That's where they are, which means that if they're doing that, there's probably more people in the country doing the similar scenario. So, but I always have that, and then I also have those guys where I could just send them a new song, like, hey man, I just got this out, and they would have it. They would be the coolest dude, quote unquote, because now they have the brand new Brian Davis, whatever, and they get to play it first, and people are going to come to them. It's just like, that's the only way you can get it is go talk to your boy Terry or whoever, you know, whoever your jacked up truck, you know, buddy is. Like, that's it, you know, whatever. So it was kind of one of those moments where it was Garth Brooks kind of marketing, you know what I mean, because he was really good at that stuff too. But so there's a million those situations, man. Just trying to figure out how to stand just this much ahead of whoever else that you're on the floor with. You know what I mean? Is the difference always in that situation, and songwriting and an artist, you know, and business, and then just being a good human. You know what I mean? There's like all those pieces of that puzzle. But But dude, we go on for hours.
Man, yeah.
When you think about like how much we've covered in our lifetime today,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
I love it.
So,
Well, man, I appreciate the time so much.
Absolutely.
Can't wait to hang in a couple months down in St. Augustine again.
There we go.
We get to do that together every year.
yes, I'll bring the cigars.
Yeah. Everybody out there listening, if you're around the Florida area, when it's September
28th,
29th, yeah, October 1st. So yeah, come hang with us. We'll be down there with all kinds of great songwriters and artists for the St. Augustine Songwriters Festival. I get to host that every year. It's a blast. So
It is.
And hope you have a great rest of your 4th of July. Thank you for doing this. Before
brother.
we wrap, I always end with the same question. So you've already given a lot of advice for people out there.
Yep.
Now let's turn it on to you.
Okay.
So if you're talking to 8-year-old Brian Davis, what advice do you give yourself now, knowing what you know?
Listen more than you talk. And no just means not yes yet. Get that thick skin quick and believe and grind.
Mic drop. I love it, dude. Thank you so much, brother.
Dude, thanks for having me.
This has been a
man.
blast. Yeah,
Dude,
absolutely.
As always, man. So anytime you need me, you got me, man.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll come back and do this again and just keep talking about all the hits that you've yet to write.
You wait till the new Lee Rice.
Oh, dude,
Lee
I
Rice
can't
record,
wait.
dude.
I cannot wait. Yeah. Yeah, I need to be one of those jacked up truck buddies that you send me these demos. So yeah.
I'll drop them to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you guys for listening. This is another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with my buddy Brian Davis. Y'all have a great 4th of July, and we'll see you next time. This has been an episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information after the show, head over to chrisblair.com. That's where you can find information on these episodes, trailer notes, video links, all kinds of great stuff. Also, make sure to leave us a great rating on iTunes, like and follow us on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. I really hope that you think this show is awesome, and we really appreciate the love and support. I promise to keep gathering great content and continuing to sit down with more amazing songwriters and artists as we grow. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for the support. We'll see you next time.